Chapter 10 of Pee-wee Harris Adrift. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Pee-wee Harris Adrift by Percy Keese Fitzhugh. The others arrive. The arrival of the 5 North Bridgeboro Scouts was the occasion of much merriment and banter. These boys from the small village up the river had formed themselves into a patrol, but they were 2 members short of the required number, and they had no scoutmaster. Whether they took scouting seriously, it would be hard to say. If so, it must have been a great comfort to them to have wished upon their budding organization such an instructor and propagandist as the diminutive genius whom they were now about to meet. Whatever material they had among them for progress in the scouting field, they gave every indication of possessing that quality of unholy mirth which distinguished the notorious silver foxes. Perhaps their silver was not quite so bright, but they gave promise. "Hey, where are you going with the apple tree?" one of them called from the nearest canoe. "What are you trying to do? Swipe a chunk of property? That's a part of North Bridgeboro you've got there." "Why didn't you take the whole village?" another called. "Hey, Rolly, where are you going with the real estate?" another called. "I knew you were too heavy for that neck of land," shouted another. "Why didn't you take the whole orchard with you?" a third wanted to know. "For the love of," another ejaculated, "look at the sign, will you? The place is discovered already." Pee-wee did not wait for formal introductions. "We're going to start the Combination Scouts of Bridgeboro," he shouted. "We're going to be Sea Scouts and Land Scouts all rolled into one. We took possession, and it's all right. Old Trimmer can't say that he owned an island, can he? We're going to have our pictures in Boy's Life and everything, and we're going to have all the apples when they're ripe, and maybe going to call ourselves the Crabapple Patrol. Maybe there's treasure buried here. How do we know? And we're going to get one of those things, a saxophone or whatever you call it, to take our latitude and longitude with. We're going to be better than the ravens and the elks and the silver foxes, and I know how to make applesauce. We're going to be a new kind of patrol." "In the name of goodness, what's that? A phonograph?" one of the approaching canoeists called. "That's the discoverer," Rolly called back. "He took possession of the island in the name of the King of Bridgeboro." "I thought it was an earthquake," laughed a tall boy who was stepping ashore. "Oh, we have those too," laughed Rolly. "All the latest improvements. That's Pee-wee. He's perfectly harmless. Step right ashore. You're all welcome." "You're stepping into the 17th century," Pee-wee shouted, descending precipitately out of the tree. "The 17th century must have been very wet," said the tall boy as he lifted one foot out of the water, only to plunge the other into the ragged, muddy edge of the island, in his efforts to get on shore. It was very funny to see him wallow in the water, seeking foothold on the submerged tentacles of root, ever slipping, and always with the soberest look on his face. "This must be the back entrance," he said. "Where are we supposed to park?" This tall boy, who turned out to be sort of a patrol leader and scoutmaster in one, had a kind of whimsical look of inquiry on his face, which was his permanent expression, and which was made the more humorous by red hair which he wore decidedly pompadour. There was that in his look which indicated his taking everything as he found it, his attitude being always quietly humorous and never surprised. His demeanor, in whatever adventure befell, seemed always that of an amiable victim placing himself at the mercy of his enterprising comrades, and going through every kind of outlandish escapade and adventure with a ludicrously sober look on his funny face. To him, everything that happened seemed part of the game of life, and he appeared never in the least astonished at anything. To see him soberly going through with some adventure which the sprightly genius of his associates had conceived was as good as a circus. Naturally, such a fellow was called Old, and they called him Old Rip, and Good Old Rip, and Dr. Rip, and Professor Rip. His name was Townsend Ripley. Townsend began at the very beginning to take the irrepressible ex-Raven very soberly indeed, and the more preposterous Pee-wee schemes, the more in favor of them Townsend seemed to be. No doubt he got a great deal of amusement out of Pee-wee, but Pee-wee never knew it. End of chapter 10. Recording by Valentina Vocelli.